When you're on the path of spiritual awakening and you have already had some experiences with the shift, with connectedness, or you are even in the dark night, then it can be that your senses are very sensitive in general. Against the colorful world, what you can do is very easy. You close your eyes. Against the eye problems with the computer, the same thing. But what with your ears? Earplugs doesn't really help. They just reduce the sound a bit, but that's all. And the world seems to become louder and louder every day, and so we suffer on our way on spiritual awakening. And in another video I have figured out the problem with the introversion and with the high sensitivity, but today let's figure out 4 solutions to deal with the sensitive ears. Basically, and fortunately, the school medicine is already on a point to define sensitive ears. They already have names for it. There are official names that they can say that is a disease or not. And these are basically, it must not be the disease, I will come to that later, but I just wanted to name it here. Basically, that are hyperacusis and misophonia. Hyperacusis is just that you are sensitive from actually everything. Compared with other people, you are more sensitive. This is hyperacusis. This also appears with basic introvert people, which are not spiritual, and also other people can be sensitive. Very unconscious people also can be sensitive. It's not just that spiritual people are this, but normally spiritual people are that, and therefore I do videos like this. And misophonia is very special. Misophonia is when someone suffers from certain sounds. They even can measure it that there is a stress reaction. They can measure it in hyperacusis too, and in both they can measure that there is a stress reaction in the body when the person hears a noise, or even if it is not so loud. But in misophonia, it just reacts on very certain noises. Some people, for example, don't like to hear when others eat. So this is more like misophonia more appears with the emotion disgust. But hyperacusis is more the case at spiritual people because it's a basic problem to be sensitive with actually all noises or all kinds of sound. But because there are these diagnoses, there are these kinds of new diseases, it's not good to have a new disease, but there is a name for it, that's the good thing. And so I went to the doctor. I wanted to know if I have one of these, or if the doc could give me any advice what to do with the loud word. And when you go to the doctor, which is responsible for ears, then of course they make the ordinary tests with your ears and so, and then they say everything is fine, you hear very well. They don't say you hear even better than others, that they don't say this. But for me it appears as if I would hear better than others. Everything is fine, and they didn't talk about any of these diseases I have mentioned here. Maybe they are too new and they don't know about them, I don't know. It was a very young doctor, so maybe, I don't know. And then I asked what to do, and she said she doesn't know. And I said that I use earplugs almost every day. And I'm worried about that. I have sorrows that this is maybe not healthy enough for my ears or generally. Or maybe I become more sensitive from using them too often. And the doctor said, no, it's okay, you can use them. You can use them even more often. You don't have to try to avoid all the time. You can use them more often if you feel comfortable with the earplugs. So, but this was not a solution for me. For us, I will name it as the first solution, and you already noticed that are the earplugs. But this is not enough. You know, with the earplugs, everything sounds so dumb. So it is not like, it doesn't feel like the original sound. This is all like, not because of the noise is reduced, but also the clearness, the clarity of the sound is not the best when your ears are blocked with that things. And so that's not a good quality, not a good life quality, and we don't want to suffer even more. So therefore, I mention it as number 1, but let's go further. Maybe even your neighbors go you on the nerves, and they are so unconscious, and other people also, all the unconscious people Also, some conscious people are sometimes loud when they have to do something, when they have to clean the house or so. But regularly, the more unconscious people are louder. And it not just goes you on the nerves, it really goes you physically on the nerves. And you suffer from that noise. And in everyday life, when every day is the same and they do their stuff regularly, so like they prepare their food and they are very loud at cooking, or they are sitting on the balcony and talking loud every day at the same times, and you don't want to hear that. It's not that you know the times of your neighbors because you're curious or so. That's not the case. You know what I mean. It's just you hear it, but you don't want it to hear. That's the problem. And so for you, it appears like hell, like almost hell. And the thing here is that, of course, on our spiritual path, we don't want to judge these neighbors. That's very hard. We don't want to judge the unconscious people. They are as they are. We have to forgive, from religions or so. They all say that, so there must be something right in this forgiving aspect. Therefore, let's try this. But this is not basically the point. You can say number two, it's you have an opportunity to forgive, but this is too cheap because forgiveness is another thing, and this doesn't really help you in the very first stance now with your ears. Yeah, forgive you can later, but first you have to solve this problem. And what I could figure out is really to meditate. And this I want to count as number two. You use these emotions which come up, because sometimes there are emotions when you hear the noise from the neighbor, especially when it's a sudden noise and you got kind of a shock. Then it can happen that you become angry, and that's an opportunity. That's an opportunity for meditation. Then you can observe the anger, not to calm down and then to go to the neighbor and talk with them in a calm mood. This is not the case. And forgiving, and so forget for now, you can do later. But first of all, use it as opportunity for meditation, to calm down for yourself and for your personal development. Because at the end, it just counts that you connect with this higher self, and not that you are angry and that you are here for 80 years, and this is just a small piece of a whole puzzle. And so meditating is always good, and generally when you are very far in your meditation, you know that you can even bear more noise when you are on a certain point. But when you fall out of this connectedness, then the sounds appear, on the one hand, harder for you, louder for you, and on the other hand, you are even more sensitive. But when you then meditate more, this will also build up kind of a protection for you. And of course, you solve anger and such emotions, and you have an opportunity to look at inside of you. Sometimes I think it comes that we are so sensitive that our ego consciousness or human consciousness tries to find stabilization on the outside more when you're on an awakening path, because you went too far inside, and then when you fall out of meditation and are entangling in the world from reading a book is sometimes enough to go too far outside, and then even if it's a spiritual book, but you are so with your thoughts in that book, and then it comes that suddenly it appears your neighbor is disturbing you while reading or so. So at me it begins, and then you have to stabilize again, you have to go to the inside. But this is just a suggestion from me, a consideration from all the years of experience of being angry because of being too sensitive for this world. Let's come to the third point. Because the doctor didn't really seem to have a good answer from me, so I watched in Google Scholar. I wanted to know some research reports and what they say about that problems, and I could also just find basic things you also can find on YouTube. It's easier to listen instead of reading all that stuff. there was basically not really more to find in research reports than I already have known before from the own experience and from what I have heard on YouTube channels which are about high sensitivity, but not with spirituality, just high sensitivity. Lots of people do such channels. But in one study I could find a very interesting aspect. There a doctor said that the brain wants to hear through the ears. It's kind of a habit. It's like the heart beats and the lungs breathe. That's an ordinary thing. The brain thinks all the time, and as well as the brain thinks and produces own thoughts, it also loves to hear, to listen. And therefore, it grabs to sounds, what it can get. And when you don't give it a sound, when you try to meditate all the time, or try to just have silence all the time, because you know how beautiful the silence is, and then the noises from your neighbors come in, also through your walls or through your window, and then the ears grab them unconsciously because the brain wants to hear. And as long as you are not enlightened and you are still in the human consciousness, the brain wants to hear and it wants to get something. And when you don't give something to the brain, then it takes what it gets on this day, and then this is just what the neighbors are talking. And it's crap, that's not good. In my case, it's crap. Maybe you think your neighbors are interesting, I don't know. But after reading this study, I considered then a very essential thing here is given. We have to give the ears something to hear, to listen. And then I started to search for some documentaries about spirituality or for longer YouTube videos so that I can give my ears half an hour every day. That first of all, that they can hear, that they have something, that the brain has something to consider, and I don't try to give my brain 24 hours of silence, because the brain, it's also a genetic thing. From the very early mankind, we needed the ears to protect us, to hear the enemy very early as possible. So earlier people which lived in the nature were very thankful to have sensitive ears, and therefore they are not that bad. They are a given thing. And now we actually don't really need them anymore, because we know enough about spirituality. When you are on this channel, you already know about that. Therefore, I talk here now about problems with that, because the basic knowledge you already have from other channels, from religions, from any philosophies, Western, Eastern, from psychology. But here we go more into problems that we now can have the final step. And when we are now at the religions, and I take a quote, and Buddha once said that it is not just important to meditate, also knowledge is important. Both aspects are important. He was not a doctor and could not, and not a researcher, and could not explain why, but he could maybe say from his own experience that this is important for the consciousness, not just that it's important from an ethical aspect or from the surface. It's maybe also said from consciousness when Buddha has spoken, and then, but he didn't tell the reason why we need knowledge and meditation. And so maybe this is because the ears are connected with the brain, and the brain needs informations, it loves informations, and you know from your unconscious neighbors which have the TV on all day, the brain loves information. And so it's also good to give your brain information when you can. And when you don't feel forced, you can connect it when your neighbors have their TV time or their loudest TV time at day. Then at the same time you can overwhelm them with your spiritual documentary or whatever you like. And then you can hear your stuff. Good food, spiritual food, nothing to eat, but the brain or the ears want something, but actually it's the brain which wants something, which the study said.
Of course, you must not just know things with content. You can also hear music, and the music nowadays will be different than the music you have heard earlier, right? It will be more calm, or maybe for some people, like unfortunately also me, you don't really like music anymore. When I had the choice between all kinds of music all around the world and silence, I would always prefer the silence. But we have to do something against the loud neighbors or the loud environment, whatever. And therefore, there are also single frequencies to find on YouTube and other platforms also. And what I really can recommend when you don't have the opportunity to go in the nature, you can also download or find any nature sounds. For example, just singing birds or ocean waves. Or if you are comfortable with, you can also take a single sound from a machine. Like there are also on YouTube and other channels available fridge sounds, also kind of like that. When you know that you can calm down with this and this is comfortable for you, then feel free in choosing whatever you like to hear instead of the noise of others. But the best choice is still the documentaries or something with content, because as Jesus said, people don't live alone from eating bread, but they also need the word. You need content. And this is because the brain hears, not just the ears. The brain wants to know things. And therefore, it is good to consume documentaries or channels like this.
And I can recommend also a link from a YouTube channel from a friend, which has basically videos which are about 15-20 minutes. And he's building up a research institution which is about consciousness and the development of consciousness. And when you're interested in research more intensively and want more about research than on this channel, then I recommend him. But back to our ears and brains, which wants to hear. We should not feel forced now all the time that we have to watch movies every day just because our neighbors do so and we want to overwhelm them. This is just one solution of 4. This was number 3. Now let's come to number 4. Because too much movies could make us dull. It can make our soul dull. So we don't have to adjust too much just because others are so loud. And we are also about getting information from the inside, from our heart, from our higher self, and not so much from the outside. But it is one solution, and you can also give your ears other stuff, and this is nature. It's also in our genes, or when you like reincarnation, you say maybe you have been a wood citizen earlier or whatever, then just go out and enjoy the forest. You can have your solitude there sometimes when, I'm here in a forest which is very close to the city, and when the weather is better, normally it is very full, kind of overcrowded sometimes, on Sunday, for example. But when you change times with the ordinary people, then it works very well. You go from Monday to Friday in the forest, in your lovely forest, or in other natural places. And on Saturday, Sunday, you avoid them. You go, if there is a library, normal university libraries also take guests and also have open on weekend. So you can, on weekend, flee there from the noise. Or when it is still as cold as in my country, then you can, in the evening, go in the university library, and at daytime you can join the forest. When it was winter and you couldn't join the forest, just the library maybe, or another place, and you are the very first time in the forest, and it also appears on the first day, or if you have never done this before because you live maybe in a bigger city, then maybe you have problems the first day with all the birds singing, all the several birds, and when you try to meditate, this confuses you, not as much as the TV of your neighbor, but also a little bit. So then don't worry, the next day will be better. It's just the very first time, and then it will become better. As well as we, for thousands of generations, made civilization a habit, so it is still the habit inside of us that we have been in nature earlier. And it will come back, but it takes a little time until we are familiar with the forest again. Against the cold, also, there are, fortunately nowadays, things like these which you can use in the forest also. Because when you're in the forest and you avoid your house, then you also save the money from your heater, and so you can buy these things which are actually from China, and they are not so expensive. And now I just wanted to show you something of a place here. This is my daytime tent because it's not allowed to sleep at night in the forest in my country, but you can see you have an office here. This is my sheet of paper for this lesson. When it's not, this is just because it was rainy today, but actually when it's not rainy, you just need a blanket and your small office, and you can have your tea, and that's all. The point is just you must have a thing which you like. When you love to write by hand, then you take your notebook and a pen and a blanket to sit or whatever you like. Maybe you can also carry a chair or whatever. And when you like to write digital, then also there are small netbooks instead of big computers. So whatever you like, you bring your stuff with you, and you also take time for meditation. And that's all. You can have a great life in the forest and have a good time with beautiful bird sounds instead of the TV of your neighbor.
Additionally, I have a bonus tip here. Generally, you can take the rule, love it, leave it, or change it. When your neighbors are too loud, or the street where you live, or whatever, in most cases, you can't change it. You know that you have tried to go to your neighbors several times and talk with them, but they are still loud again and again. Or you have tried other things and they don't really work in long term. So a change is just possible when you change the place, when you go out to the forest or to a library or to another place. So this comes to leave it, love it, leave it, and change it. So when a change is not possible, because in most cases you can't change the others, so you have to leave then. Or you change your view on this. This is also kind of a change, your perspective. You meditate and accept the loud noises as possibility to observe anger or whatever. Or you just leave. You leave and change the place. You go to the library or to the forest or whatever you have nearby. Or also you have to take the car and to drive around a bit. But this can also be good because the car noise, when you sit inside of the car, it's also a monotone sound for you. It's for your sensitivity more welcome than when you are sitting in the house and all the cars are rushing. And so when you sit inside of a car and driving on your own, then you have a constant sound. This is better for the ears, for the sensitivity, or love it. Accept really the neighbors as they are. And you one day will do. And the more you meditate, the more you calm down, although there are all these sounds and also they are disturbing, they will not disturb anymore one day. The more, and you know that the more you're on the connectedness, suddenly you are still hearing all the voices and noises, but they suddenly don't harm so much anymore the deeper you are in meditation.
Have a good time. See you next time. Bye.